Hey everybody, and welcome to day 4 of the September Saga, where I'm making a video every day, especially on days I don't want to. And today we have something kind of interesting. It was a conversation I had on Reddit. Yes, on day 4 you find out I'm a Redditor. And it was about D&D, because of course it was, Dungeons& and Dragons. Yeah, and let's just hop right into it. I'm gonna read out my original post and then some comments, and then give my thoughts on it. It was just an interesting conversation that I thought merited talking about. So here we go. So my post was on DM Academy, which is a fantastic forum that is basically for DMs to talk to each other and give each other opinions. Uh, so I said, looking for a way to unite the party. I love the way that Baldur's Gate 3 sets up the companions and your PC to have common goals and all be in one place. The Mind Flare ship flies around and grabs up all the relevant people and then puts a tadpole in their head so they have to work together to get them out. If you applied this scenario to a tabletop campaign, it would allow your players to be from anywhere in your world with varying motivations and alignment, and yet they would find themselves in the same scenario with similar goals to work together. Other video games, like The Elder Scrolls, use prison to accomplish the same idea. What are some other ways to accomplish this? I would love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. So, of course, in the most Reddit fashion possible, somebody took one sentence from that that wasn't the question and decided to think about that. I think that's a fine thing to do. Free speech. I'm literally posting on Reddit. I'm asking for it. I'm just pointing out that that always tends to happen. And so somebody said, um, quoting me with a typo, saying, it would allow your players to have varying motivations and alignment. Why is this desirable, though? Certainly, that is one type of campaign that can be run, but just because such characters in the start in the same situation doesn't mean that they will agree on how to solve their common goal. Player freedom is not a worthy or desirable goal if it just means the DM has to do more work to try to hold things together. And then I said, it seems we see the game very differently, and that's okay. This is desirable to me because conflict, especially between players, is a necessary part of my campaigns. I don't view things that make me have to do more work as a bad thing. I love being a DM, and it doesn't feel bad when I have to spend hours cleaning up messes. It feels like exactly what I signed up for. Personally, a campaign where I ask my players to have similar viewpoints and ultimately chase the same goals would be boring for me. I much prefer the tug of war that happens when I use their backstories and relationships to drive 4 people who have strong independent desires towards the same path. Um, oh, I don't have his response. Okay, sorry, it won't be on screen. His response to that is, yeah, I guess. To me, D&D should be a collaborative effort. The work should be distributed evenly across all participants, or as evenly as it can be, given the DM has always will always be doing more to build a story that works. And this is important to me because every time I've burnt out, I've seen burnt out in my friends' circles, and a large majority of the stories on Reddit here that we see nearly every day when DMs are asking to help with burnout. And so implicit here is that the reality we're talking about campaigns and tables and just stories ending prematurely. People have bad experiences, people walking away from the hobby. It's because the DM has had to shoulder basically the entire burden of actual storytelling. Not to mention, I just have a reality where my time to devote to my hobby away from the table is limited in very practical ways. I don't think it's a flex to spend hours cleaning up messes. I don't think it's a flex to be admittedly the only one who's actively trying to build something cohesive in your group. And most definitely, having a party of characters with the same view does not ever preclude the role play of conflict, nor players who use their backstories and relationships to drive the plot. So, yeah, I guess my point is that I think what you're saying is a gain from my quote unquote player freedom is demonstrably not a unique product of that. So, what I hear is I don't mind doing more work and spending lots of time cleaning up messes to get the same result as not dealing with all that. Like, okay. And then finally, my response to that was, the way I enjoy playing D&D is not correct, and neither is yours. The hobby is explicitly designed in a way to allow players to play the game they want to, so it's a good thing that we see the game very differently. It means the designers accomplish their goals. Burnout is a very real concern. I'm happy that you're avoiding it, doing things that cause burnout. That's a great strategy. But what causes me to burn out and what causes you to burn out is not the same. I agree spending hours cleaning up messes is not a flex, and I didn't intend it as one. It's also not a flex to be the only one in your group trying to build something cohesive. It's also not true of any group I've ever had, and that is a huge leap to assume that because I put in hours of work into something that I love, that my players aren't doing the same. I never said my players, I want them to be chaos junkies, constantly trying to destroy the cohesion of my game. I simply said that I want them to have strong opposing moralities and viewpoints that spark conflict between them, which often leads to my players having lengthy discussions in and out of game. Uh, I was spending hours developing their characters for moments that we all love. I said having a party with similar views would be boring for me. Of course, there can still be conflict between people with similar views. I personally just find that less interesting. If it feels like players having different views would be tons more work for no benefit to you, then don't play that way. I don't mind doing more work and spending lots of time cleaning up messes to get the same result and not dealing with all that. This statement is a gross oversimplification of what I said, but even if it was my opinion, why act like it's capable of being wrong? If someone has this mindset, which to be clear, I do not, there's nothing wrong with that. I see DMs and players who play tables I would be miserable at every day on here, and that's amazing. I love that a simple hobby is allowing very different groups of people to express themselves in very different ways. None of them are wrong. None of them are a waste of time. They enjoy it. Let them enjoy it instead of trying to attack their entirely subjective ideas. And that is where the thread ends. As you can see from the screenshot, it was 1 minute ago when I snipped my last comment. Um, But just in general, I think that this is a very common experience on Reddit, but even just widely through D&D as a community, where people try to figure out whether it's right or whether it's true um, when they're talking about an issue that can't be right and it can't be true. I don't know. I find it so interesting that people argue this hard, and I'm obviously doing it too, right? I'm arguing back, and I love doing that. I enjoy it. I don't hold anything against this person. I think they're more than in the right to voice their opinion. But I think it's strange when you say things like, "I don't think it's a flex," or "You're just wasting your time." I think things like that are strange to me, right? Because in reality, if you actually had to argue whether or not being a dungeon master in a game where you roll dice is a waste of time. I mean, it can or cannot be depending on whether or not you enjoy it, right? Like, uh, you might think it's a waste of time, but whether I'm wasting my time doing it is entirely up to me, right? It is impossible for somebody else to decide that about my life, right? Like, I can do whatever I want with my time, and whether or not I'm wasting it is up to me, right? There are people that drive trucks for a living and enjoy that and are doing it all the time. I would feel like I was wasting my time if I was driving a truck across the country, and I would not enjoy that. But you don't see me showing up to like truckers unions, being like, "Guys, please stop driving." Like it just seems strange. But I also kind of want to talk about this idea in general, right? Of why I really enjoy this conflict, and I kind of explained it in my responses and in the post. But I think that it's so fascinating to play D&D in a way where this idea that you have to be a party and you have to be heroes and you have to be cohesive is so strange to me that um, lots of DMs say splitting the party is a bad idea. I don't think it is. I think if your players are genuinely so opposed to one another, so upset with the other one's ideas that they are considering leaving, I think that makes for a fantastic session. And do you have to end the session as a DM where you come up with a clever way to make them not separate? No, you don't have to. I think that is often going to be the direction that I would go and most people would go, but I do not think that it's the necessary direction. I think that you could actually have any outcome you could imagine. You could have one of the players make a new character and they actually leave and maybe they revisit that character later in the story. Or maybe you split the party for a few sessions, maybe a few hours even, and you actually have them be apart for a bit, and you have them doing separate things. Because honestly, at my tables, and again, this is entirely subjective. If you hear this and think it's stupid, good, don't do that. But at my tables, most of the players are equally, if not more, invested in each other's stories than they are their own. And obviously, if I was straight up ignoring one of my players for months of playing, they'd get bored. You know, that would be, they'd probably be concerned that I personally had something against them. That would be a lot. But if it's 2 or 3 sessions where we're highlighting one person or maybe two people, and they're not in the spotlight, some players get upset by that, and my players, we have conversations about it before we ever even roll a single die, um, so that we come to the understanding that we're on the same page about it, right? And if we're not on the same page about it, then we don't play together. I think it's the same thing with any group, right? You have to make sure that your boundaries and your expectations align. That's what session zero is for. And that doesn't mean that the players I don't choose and that don't align with me are bad at the game or are stupid or are doing something tedious. You know, it just means they're doing something I don't like. And I think it's strange that with subjective things like this, people try to find the truth, you know, the answer, when there isn't one. There cannot be one. It is inherent to the subjectivity of the topic and of the fact that we're playing a role playing game, um, that it can't be correct. You can't do it the right way. And I think I'm going to use this YouTube channel in the future. I'm going to continue to give advice to people. Yesterday, we did a whole guide on Baldur's Gate 3, where I said a lot of like strong claims and opinions. I said I think that these ideas are wrong, or these ideas don't make sense to me, and I'm not going to say to me in every single sentence because you'd get bored. Obviously, today when we're talking about a very subjective thing, I'm using it to prove that point. Um, I think subjectivity is very heavily implied, and I tend to think that it's implied every time somebody is speaking to you, right? Even if they have a tone, um, like I perceived this commenter to have, where it didn't sound like he was saying, I feel this way. It sounded like he was saying, I don't know, I don't get why you feel that way, and you probably shouldn't. Um, but even then, you know, that was his subjective view of what was happening, and that's why I tried to keep it um, less argumentative and more, respectful in the responses. I say tried keyword. Maybe I failed, but um, I just think that it's so fascinating, and I think it's a instinct. I think I have the instinct as well. I think it is just core and inherent to being a person, that when you hear an opinion that you disagree with, you want to prove it wrong, but most of the time you can't prove it wrong, right? I think oftentimes you can dig into the source of why somebody feels that way, and you might be able to invalidate that, right? If the reason I have a strong claim, a strong opinion, is because of an article I read, and then you can prove to me that that article was actually sarcasm or not real or written as like a some kind of false propaganda, you know, that might change my mind. But also, if I just felt that way and I used some article to confirm it, I'm just going to look for a new way to confirm it. And I don't know that that is necessarily the correct way to go about life, but it is how people act. And so I don't know that it is um, necessary to attack those things, because, like I was saying, you know, it can't really be correct. I said I don't feel like it's correct, but that's just me. That's just how I am. So yeah, I will go ahead and see you tomorrow, where I'm thinking we're going to talk more about D&D. I've been on this train. I've been thinking about it quite a lot, so look forward to that, and I'll see you then. Just kidding. Last minute addendum here to the video. First time I'll be editing ever, because we did get a response, and I think it very much changes things, and it very much warrants an inclusion in the video, and not a follow-up on the next day. So he responded to my last comment by saying, first, let me apologize. I'm sorry I was being unduly provocative. I don't know how much time you spend here on DM Academy, but there is a very real problem with burnout and imposter syndrome that runs through it as an undercurrent. And in the hobby in general, with the death of DMs and forever DMs/people trapped as the DM because simply no one else will do the work, these are real problems that negatively impact the hobby as a whole. if no other way, then simply fewer people will ever get to really experience it because it's so hard to find DMs or games. And so, what I find myself doing here a lot is trying to fight that. People come here all the time saying what you're saying. Hey, I think I need to do more work for my D&D game. Can you people of Reddit help me, help show me how to do more work? When this just isn't what the hobby needs. It just doesn't need the perception that the DM needs to do the work all the time. What it needs in droves is better players. What it needs is players to do more work. And so that's why I posted what I did initially. I wanted to be a little provocative to get your attention, and that of any DM reading this who's thinking they need to do more work. So I could start the conversation of, hey, why do you think you need to do more work? Why do you think it's on you to do this work? And I think I probably lost sight of that you're an individual with your individual goals and wants. So sorry for doing that. I'll get off my soapbox now and actually answer your question. And then he goes into what the original question of the post was, which was actually something I critiqued earlier in the video. So I think he actually addressed basically everything I said. So I think this is a fantastic response. And I will, in the description, I'm going to link to this thread so you can go ahead and read through it yourself if you want to. Because there's more comments than this. And I'm going to write a response to him right after I finish this. And it's going to be a very positive one. I think that with this extra context of what he was thinking, his points make a lot more sense to me. They're a lot more clear. And again, I said in the video, his points were already valid, right? It was just his opinion and mine, and we differed. And I was talking about how I felt about it, and he was responding with how he felt about it. And I think that's totally fine. And now that I know his reasons for those claims, I actually fully agree with him. And articulating that sometimes can be difficult. And like he said, he was being provocative to kind of get the attention of who he thought I might be and other DMs who are going to read this. Um, and I think that's a fantastic strategy. I do that quite often where you kind of exaggerate something that you don't necessarily feel that way entirely, but you're doing it to prove a point or you're doing it to provide a reason for something. And so I think that's totally understandable, right? And I absolutely agree with what he's saying that DM burnout and DM responsibility and fear of DMing for people who never have is a huge problem in D&D. I mean, I know when I make a post because I am a forever DM and not one that is stuck in the role, but one that only enjoys that role. I don't like being a player. I've never really had even half as good a time as I have DMing when I'm a player. Sorry to some friends I made along the way that have DM'd for me. Your game was great. It's just it's me. I don't. It's not you. It's me. I just don't like that role. Um, but I genuinely do relate. Did that light just get brighter? I feel like that light just got brighter. And I also had it off for the beginning, so that's fun. Anyway, I do think that it is a real problem that DMs are quitting or getting burnt out and needing to take long breaks. I've certainly experienced that myself. As I stated earlier, I don't think this is one of the reasons for that, but there are lots of reasons. And I think trying to fight for that in the comments and trying to convince other DMs who are going to read our whole back and forth that they shouldn't feel the need to do this work is great. And the fact that his responses made me clarify that, made me clarify that this is me. This is I'm an individual. This is how I feel. I'm not saying you should feel this way. I'm not saying you should do it this way. I'm saying this is how I do. And he pointed out that that my responses clarified that for him. And honestly, I feel like this is a perfect little capstone to our conversation. And it makes me feel great about. I already felt good about our conversation. I already wanted to share it on here, um, but now that it has this happy little ending, where instead of me being on the soapbox, explaining myself, we're both able to at the end, as he said, get off of our soapboxes and realize, like, hey, we're just two guys. We're just people who are trying to defend and support our hobby and have a good time, and that makes me really happy. I'm glad it ended that way. So second outro, I will see you tomorrow. It will not be a follow-up on this, but like I said, probably something else about D&D. Maybe a character build or something. That would be fun. We'll see what mood I'm in tomorrow. Yeah, I will see you on the flip side.